This is the Creative Mindset Podcast, and I'm your host, Chris Rusakis. And today we have a very special episode. We are with our friends from Northern Helm here at their location at Baseline and Fisher. And keep in mind, folks, we got 420 coming up. They got a big sale going on. Select cannabis and cannabis accessories, 42% off, all the way to 420. They're going to set you up. And don't worry. You don't have to come into the store if you don't want to. They'll deliver it right to your door. You can order it online. And remember, the promo code CREATIVE15 at checkout, they're going to set you up. And they got the goods. And speaking of the goods, I've even got the CEO of Northern Helm sitting with me today. We got David Côté in the house. David, say hi to everybody.
What's up, Chris? Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's honestly a process that has taken to get to this point, and I'm so excited that Northern Helm is a friend of the show now, and you know, the greatest trucker hat I've probably ever worn. So thank you for that.
We'll make sure you get a few more too.
Exactly, yeah. Now you're an Ottawa boy.
Grew up in Greeley.
Went to
St. Mark.
Roots here, and you know, I think it's interesting that Northern Helm has roots all across Ontario now. Started by you, started by this idea that, you know, we can have accessibility to such great product. And I want to jump into, you know, childhood David Côté. Were you ever into the culture of, you know, weed back then when it was illicit?
I don't think any of my friends when I was growing up would have expected that this would be where I was at. I certainly didn't expect that this was where I was at. I was a pretty boring kid. Played sports, tried to do my homework. That was about it. Did not expect that this was the world that I would inhabit. But the amazing thing about the cannabis space and where it's come in the last few years, and we're still very much at the start of this journey, is we're getting towards normalization. This is a part of people's lives.
That's right.
An individual doesn't have to be defined as a stoner because they consume cannabis. They're defined as a father or a worker. They have so many other things that define them in their lives. It's a part of their lives.
I love that, yeah. So at the end of the day then, it's not like you have this long-standing nickname as Captain Cannabis or anything like that, right?
No, but that is a great name. If you want to coin that one, I'm good.
All right. So, you know, speaking back to, you know, childhood and all that, you know, starting a business like this, there's a lot of hoops to go through. And I'm wondering, like, were you the guy that had the paper route at age 9 or something like that? Or, you know, had your own little small business back then?
No, at age 9, I was playing mini sticks in Dylan's basement.
Okay. And Dylan being the owner of Northern Helm Ottawa, shout out Dylan.
Owner and manager of the Ottawa store.
Yeah.
Very
We're
lucky
gonna
to
get
work
his face up right here.
Fantastic.
We're gonna give him
that
a
hair
thumbs up.
coming down.
Yeah.
I like that.
He's got a good flow.
Yeah.
He's got a good flow, that's for sure. So when did that entrepreneurial bug kind of set in? Because I know you went to business school at Western. You know, there must have been this, you know, thought in your mind, you know, 17, 18, that you knew you were going down a path to become a businessman.
Yeah, I definitely, I think I was very fortunate growing up that I was surrounded by people with businesses and surrounded by people that had started businesses. So I look at my family directly. They have the entrepreneurial household for sure. One of their businesses is 23 years old now. And you having a business, you know how difficult it is to get to 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 23 years and self-funded. That's
for sure.
That is a journey, and there's effort. And growing up in that household, knowing the good, the bad, and the ugly of running a business, or at least seeing it closer than a lot of people get to see it, it certainly, when you're in it, there's more to it, and you recognize that. It gets rid of some of that romance of the Hollywood style of starting a business. But having that in my household, and look at the friends and family around me, there was always that business mindset. And I recognized at 17, 18 that I didn't have what it took to do what they were doing yet. But I certainly wanted to learn about it, and that was that goal. And it's funny listening to some of your other episodes in the path that you took, and like you got that first camera, and that first camera wasn't you didn't have that 10-year vision that you were going to be sitting in a cannabis store having a conversation on a podcast,
Yeah.
but you knew that you were going to take that and iterate upon it and learn and keep changing every 6 months as necessary in that reflection
Yeah,
period.
that's interesting you say that because, 100% I had this fear that, and I think I allude to this in previous episodes, where I was so nervous that photography was just going to become one of those hobbies that I had picked up and dropped, months, years later. And I don't know, maybe that was the driving force for me to continue onward and prove to myself that it was possible to make a career as an artist. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah.
Well, I think, and it's something like a couple of the things that you've said really resonated with me. It was this idea, and like I'm paraphrasing here, so correct me if I'm wrong. It's you knew that you wanted to create something that your creativity could keep thriving, and that was really, and you want to leave a legacy with your creativity, right?
Yeah. Like
That's your vision that's pushing you.
there's always ways to adapt, right? Because a lot of people are photographers, and I think I definitely came to a point where I felt that the market was saturated. Every third person I talked to was a wedding photographer or a baby photographer, and it was like I definitely had these instances where I thought, man, is everybody just going to be a photographer at some point? Because now a digital SLR is $1,500 and you can buy it, but working through that, I definitely found my path, and I love that it's been able to adapt into this greater vision of creativity than being just a photographer at the end of the day.
That's amazing, and having that drive you, I think, in a somewhat similar vein, but not quite the same. Certainly a parallel path. I want to build something that will last longer than I'm around for it, and that's really where Northern Helm comes in. But I can tell you, 15 years ago, I didn't have that idea. I didn't have that vision in place
Right.
for this specific business. So it was the point of continue to learn, surround myself with awesome people,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
recognize that I can learn from every single person in the room.
Yeah, because I can imagine when you were in university, we're talking what, like 2006, 7 kind of thing?
'08 is when I started.
Oh, wait. Okay, so I'm a bit older than you. There you go, guys. You can figure it out now. But I know for a fact legalization was on nobody's radar. We had Stephen Harper as our prime minister. I don't think
Serious recession going on. A couple other things
That's
to
right.
worry about.
I don't think anybody had foreseen what the Trudeau government was going to do with the industry, and I can't even fathom talking to someone older than us, being, oh, I knew I was going to open a weed store in like 2010.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah, so let's talk about this because you finished school here, and I think you went back to Western for an MB, right?
Yeah, so coming out of school, I had the conversations with a number of people in my life. Again, lucky to have great people that I can bounce ideas off of, and like my grandfather was in the CPG retail world, and he made the point, and a number of his contacts, and made the point of learn how to sell. If you learn how to sell and understand the retail space, you can get that mindset of what consumers are actually looking for. So I was fortunate enough to end up going to SC Johnson and work with some awesome people there, end up on the Loblaw business. And that Loblaw in Canada is, in my opinion, one of the best at understanding who their customer is. But also being respectful of everybody else that is coming in the store, because they know
That's true.
They know the definition of who their customer is every single time they're coming in. And we've got the alarm going behind us, but they also.
It's okay, guys. It's a secure location. Yeah. We're locked down right now, so to be expected.
So they're aware that their customer is 35-year-old female driving a Subaru that's white. It's probably got one car seat in the back. She works 40 hours a week. She does a good job of staying healthy while managing the full-time life of working and the full-time life of family. But they also know that 95% of the people coming through their doors are not her. So they need to be respectful of everybody coming in. They need to be accessible for everybody else coming through the door, and make it so that everybody feels something as they're going through. So that was like, I look back at that learning, and I look back at dealing with a customer like that, and being at SC Johnson, a family company. And that was a huge part of my education. As much as it was work, that was education for me. And then afterwards, I went back to school to kind of further that education.
Yeah, that's interesting because, for me, I dropped out of university. I dropped out of college. I had never thought about going to business school. And there's this catch up that I've had to play over the last few years of just obtaining knowledge through, other podcasts, master classes, books, whatnot. And
isn't it amazing that we're in a world that you can get that right now? Like, we have access to so much amazing information.
Exactly. And I think for me, exactly what you were saying about figuring out that ideal customer is something that I have to put my own clients through every day when we talk, because you have to identify that ideal customer in a sense that, this is where I want my company to grow. And, be it for me thinking of my ideal customer and then having that client have to do the same process. Business is such a key point, and I truly believe the foundation that you created for yourself with that schooling has led to the success that you've had here.
I'm very fortunate that has been the path, and I think we're still at the start of the journey here. We're certainly at the start of the journey for Northern Helm, and I expect my career will be hopefully a little bit longer than what I've experienced thus far. So it's constant. Every 6 months looking back, like that quote attributed to Elon Musk, I believe he said it. He wants to look back every 6 months and think about what an idiot he was, and like, because of the amount of things that he's learned in that period of time. And of course, that's aspirational, but that's a pretty cool mindset to have.
Yeah, well, it's true because this time of year for me, I take on a lot of interns from colleges, and especially with the photo interns, I always bring in my portfolio from when I was in college to show them, because I think it's interesting to look back, 15 years and be like, I was where you were, and there are these moments in your career that will happen that will get you to a point where you can be exactly like me. And I think it's always important to show the reality to people of where you started. And speaking to that, your start came from, pretty much other organizations that were very much at the forefront of the legalization movement. Definitely. So let's get into that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it started with Canopy, is that right? Or
it was Tokyo Smoke before.
Tokyo Smoke.
So at that time it was Haiku, Tokyo Smoke, and Doja, and Vanderpop were the three brands in that portfolio when I joined. So that was prior to being involved with Canopy, because Canopy purchased Haiku.
That's right. So what was that? That was like your one of your first real jobs after SC Johnson?
No. So I was SC Johnson, then went back to school, and I got in with Accenture and retail strategy, again leveraging that past history. Ended up with one of my clients, RBI, so Tim Hortons, needed the operational side. It was very clear that I was not a good consultant, but I wanted to learn more about the operations and work with some really, really interesting people and learn the franchise side of the business. It was so fun bombing around Ohio, handling franchise operations, and
cool.
recognizing the amazing effort that is going into each of these businesses to run on a daily basis and serve those guests and make it so that people, you don't see the back end when you're sitting in a drive-through and you wheel through and you get your coffee in 2 minutes and you're back on the road. There's a lot of effort that goes into it. And I had been introduced to through former. He was a classmate of mine, Aaron Sauls, had introduced me to Brian Pulcinello and Alan Gertner. So Alan Gertner and his father, Lauren, started Tokyo Smoke. And Lauren was one of the first investors in medical cannabis back in the late 90s. Like you talk 2010, we weren't thinking legalization. He was thinking legalization in the 90s, which is just like so far out there for me.
Right.
And I'd been chatting with them. I was just really interested in what they were doing and wondering how, even on the side, get involved with a group that was clearly so far ahead of the thinking that most of the rest of the world was. And I was actually in the midst of the movers were in my condo, determining what the move would be like for. They were setting us up for our move to Miami because I was moving to Miami with RBI, and Brian called me and asked if I would come on to do retail operations for Tokyo Smoke pre-legalization,
And we're talking like you're 25 years old at this point.
28. Almost,
Okay.
yeah.
So you're still young, like you still had this, trying to find your path kind of thing, right?
Oh, big
And this
time.
was very much the crossroads.
Well, I think that's the age where we all think we know everything in the world, and we realize very quickly that there's still a lot to learn, and that was a big risk, frankly, to not continue with RBI and not continue working with the awesome people that were there and keep going on that path that they were creating and got to be a part of. But there were only a dozen people working in the office at Haiku at that time. It was pretty tight, and
it was a startup.
It was 1,700 square feet.
And this is pre-legalization.
This is March 2018 is when I started with them. So we didn't know what the legalization date was going to be, and in the time from there to what ended up being legalization October 17th, that business went from a couple dozen people, if you counted the coffee shop staff, to I think about 125 people.
Right.
Went through an announced acquisition with WeedMD to an actual acquisition with Canopy, and then opening 2 stores on 1017 in Winnipeg, plus doing e-com. So that 6-7 month period was probably the wildest period of my career, just in the amount of building a plane while we were flying it, because there was no baseline. We couldn't get sector data on what the cannabis space was doing and what people wanted. We were looking at, this is how people generally shop in coffee, in grocery, in LCBO, in banking. Like, what does retail banking look like from a security perspective, and how do we manage this?
Yeah, because I guess if I think of other countries that have had legalization, the big one, obviously Holland and the red light district area of Amsterdam and all the goings on there, but that's a whole different ball game than how we treat it in Canada.
Very different, yes.
It's coming to mind. We forgot to.
I was going to ask.
Crack our Red Bull. Major props to Red Bull for these peach edition Red Bull drinks. They're awesome. Have you had one yet?
I haven't had the peach one, so I'm excited.
Well, let's
for this
crack
morning.
one
Let's do
open.
this.
I'm a little bit parched right now, so.
Oh yeah, that's a nice crack. Cheers. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Okay,
but you make the point about Holland, and there was one place that had legalized. Of course, like we all know some of the stories out of California and the efforts that went into California. The one place that was the closest to what we expected Canada to be like was Colorado. So we did spend some time in Colorado going around with retailers that were there. Huge differences in the Colorado market to Canada and the Ontario market, because everything that is sold at retail has to be grown by that same producer and that same retailer. It's full vertical integration. But they had 5 years of data. And got to talk to a lot.
So did you go down to Colorado?
Yeah, of course.
You took a little ski trip to Aspen?
There was no skiing involved. there was a lot of store tours.
Whenever I think of Colorado, it always takes me back to Dumb and Dumber and that beautiful ski trip that they took to deliver the money. So that's kind of what I was picturing, but that's okay.
I'm going to let you keep that one.
All right.
Assume that it was like that. It was a lot of going into stores and getting ID checked by people that they looked like they were military.
Yeah, exactly. Now, obviously, 2019 comes, and we have 2 things happen. A shift in perception of marijuana and the people that use it, and also the legalization of marijuana in Canada.
Yeah, 2018. October
2018.
October 17th, 2018.
You can tell how much of a stoner I am with my dates here. But
It all blends together,
exactly.
right?
I remember that night, and there was literally a party that took place close to Parliament Hill with some bureaucrats and folks like myself were there, and it was high fives, heavy drinking, and just a party because everybody was so excited to see what was going to happen here. And in my eyes, we've probably got to the point now which I had envisioned in my head, which is just like a convenience store, a weed shop can be almost everywhere. And I'm not looked upon as, a stoner or an idiot because I smoke every day. It's very much, like the mom that goes home and has a glass of wine after she puts her kids to sleep. It's treated
How's it any different?
Exactly. And I think I wanna get your opinions and, hear some of those stories about how thrilled people that were working in this business, that were obviously on this path to legalization and always hoped and dreamed to see it actually happen.
Yeah, that was a surreal day, 10/17 for me and anybody that was working on the business at that point, and just some amazing people that were in the business and around me, and picturing all their faces now, and they're all doing such cool things with a ton of different businesses right now. But the lead up, the couple days before that, we unloaded the first pallets, the first delivery of cannabis legally for recreation was at the Winnipeg Exchange store for Tokyo Smoke, and it showed up in an 18-wheeler. And anybody that's been to the Exchange District, it's all one-way streets. There's no parking. There's no place for this to go. We're trying to keep the media away from the stores, and the truck shows up, and he doesn't have the key to get the lock off the back. So we've got this big 18-wheeler sitting on a one-way street in a no parking zone.
So did you pull out the big chainsaw?
Well, we were trying to find something to cut it, and there's still construction going on in the store. This is October 15th. We're supposed to open on October 17th. And I went around to the guys that were still working in there. I was like, does anybody have something that we can get into this truck? Electrician goes to his truck and gets me a metal grinder.
Okay.
Hands it to me, and he's like, don't start until I walk away. I don't want to be a part of this.
Oh, wow.
He's like, this is weird. But he hands it to me, and I was the only one out there. So it's me and the truck driver, and I cut the locks off using the metal grinder, and I took a picture of those locks after I cut them off because I was like, this is too crazy.
Yeah.
This is the world that we're living in. Open up the back, and there's pallets of cannabis there, and of course, the truck is not right next to the building, so we're hand bombing pallets of cannabis.
I can only imagine Winnipeg too.
Yeah, thankfully it was October. It was pretty nice, but we're doing this on the side of the building as CBC rolls up to the front of the building.
Okay.
And we're trying to hold CBC there so that they're not. We don't want anything to. We were doing everything by the book and accurate. Oh yeah, it was fine, but you don't want a photo.
So there wasn't a photo op.
No, there wasn't a photo op. They saw exactly.
You guys got a good marketing team then.
Of course, yeah. It was a great crew, but that's kind of how the week was going, and we were a very small team with Haiku. There were 10 or 11 of us that were bouncing around to get these stores open, and we knew that we're trying to get the Dominion store open in Winnipeg. That was going to be the store that we knew we could open in the morning. It was unclear from the construction perspective whether we could get the Exchange store open in the afternoon at all. The construction team just like next level, the stuff they were able to pull off to get that going. But standing in the Dominion store, of course, we were there until very early in the morning, and we did one of the first legal transactions very early in the morning to test the system because we didn't want we knew there were going to be lines.
Yeah.
So we did those first transactions as tests right as Bruce was doing the transactions in Newfoundland.
This is reminding me of this show on Netflix. It's called 5 Days Out, and they basically follow high-profile people or businesses that are 5 days out from a major event. And honestly, I can almost imagine the amount of extra hours you had to put in to make this a reality and not a joke come day one.
It was huge.
And, you know, since that's happened, you bumped around a bit within the cannabis culture. And we're
But
now...
I think it's worth covering. You asked the question of those visionaries and what it was like for them.
Yeah.
I think it's worth calling that out. Like I was standing next to Brian Polsonella, who was the
Yep.
president of Haiku at the time, head of retail once we switched into Canopy. I was standing next to him and took a video of the first guests walking through the door.
Yeah.
And
You're crying. You're like,
yeah,
so proud.
and that was the feeling. It was like, oh wow, everybody put those hours in, and that was months and for some people years and years of effort to get to that point. And that was such a surreal moment to standing next to him. And then it's like, well, we need to go over to Exchange and get that store open.
Mm-hmm.
Managed to open that store at 4:20.
Okay.
We had one till working. We were just it
happened.
It happened. It was wild. But at the end of the night, when you were having the party on Parliament Hill, it was closer to 10 o'clock when we were closing. Alan Gertner, one of the founders of Tokyo Smoke, came into it. He wanted to do a transaction. Didn't want to get in the way of guests, but wanted to do a transaction. And I was working on the till and cashed him out and he just came around and gave me a hug.
What was that order? Was it a big bag of weed?
Oh, it was a big bag of weed, of course. But the point being, like, and you could see the pride that he had in having him and Lauren having created this originally, and it going from that vision for so many years to being able to do a transaction.
Yeah.
That for me really hit. It was like, wow. This was his vision that has been brought to life,
Yeah.
and he just got to do a transaction of legal recreational cannabis in Canada.
Yeah, it's funny because I was having a conversation with one of our cameramen here who, has only been in Canada for a couple of years now, and we were talking yesterday about legalization and what it was like prior to that, and he was like, "So what did you do before it was legal?" And I was like, man, we just smoked and hoped for the best.
Yeah, and there weren't any regulations to determine what product you were actually getting.
Yeah, exactly, right? And, I think of the importance of that, too, because there's definitely been a couple clients that I've had previously that were unregulated, and I remember this day clearly. They had sent me a loot to try out and post some stuff on Instagram with. And the milligrams per their edibles was far greater than what the Canadian government has regulated. And I went home early on a Friday to do this, thinking, I was going to have some fun. But I literally took a piece from everything. And within 35 minutes, I was spinning. And I was on my couch in a ball and could not get up. And I just sat there from 3 o'clock to the next morning because, I was sky high off unregulated product. And, for me now, obviously it's become this corporate world of a drug, which I used to indulge in as a youth and so on. But I truly believe we're in a better place now with how we run the operations of this business, and the whole idea of legalization in Canada has now created this idea that, okay, well, maybe the psychedelics are next. Mm-hmm. And we've started this path where we can really move forward in other areas of the same realm. And I'm wondering, now that you've got this space, I want to hear more about Northern Helm right now.
Absolutely.
But, a couple questions from now, I'm going to ask you about what's next. So let's talk about Northern Helm, though, for this moment.
Yeah, and just leading into that Northern Helm question, which of course we want to chat more about. I think it's interesting to put the context of alcohol prohibition being lifted, because you talk about the illicit market and the unregulated products. When we can look at alcohol prohibition, because there are some similarities just in terms of the trajectory afterwards. The biggest driver of product development when alcohol was illicit was alcohol content per unit. So you wanted the absolute highest alcohol content possible.
The 98%.
Yeah, because that way you could transport it. You could transport it, and then the consumer would get it, and they would mix it with whatever they wanted to make it taste better. 15 years after legalization of alcohol and prohibition was lifted, Budweiser's the number one product. You're a 5% beer, because consumers actually got what they were looking for, and businesses had time to iterate and learn and try new things to get to the point where they're delivering what the guests were looking for. So you make that comment about the illicit products that you tried. They're unregulated products that we can get into the whole details of how those products were developed, and like, are they operating in a food safe environment to even get you that product? You don't know what chemicals are on the back end. But the fact of the matter is, you did not have a positive experience. You're not going to run out and purchase that product again. And that is a bad thing for the industry. It's bad for normalization. It's bad for you, obviously, and it's bad for everyone around you. So it's what I'm excited about. And yeah, the regulations are on the lower end in terms of how much is possible to go into each product right now. But at least we're learning, and we're a couple of years into this. We're a few years into this. We're very early, if you even look at that 15-year time horizon, where the products keep developing and the beverages that are coming out keep getting better and better.
Very
And we're going to be able to have better beverages. The growing cycles, the licensed producers are getting better at it, because they've had the opportunity to make some mistakes. We all make mistakes. That's how we get here, and it's getting more in line with what the consumers are looking for. And I really wanted that mindset to be at the forefront of what we were doing with Northern Helm. I had the benefit of and the amazing opportunity to be with Tokyo Smoke right at the start. We did everything that we thought was right based on the information that was available, and we learned from that. When
you adapted,
and we adapted. By the time Tokyo Smoke 333 Young was opening in Toronto, there were a lot of learnings from the previous stores that were adapted to that. And then the same thing when we were doing the next iteration of Tweed stores. We adapted based on what we were learning from the other stores that were operating. When I left Canopy and we did Cannabis Jacks, we learned from that, and how can we make it better for the consumer coming through. And with Northern Helm, like, the vision of Northern Helm is to make it so that cannabis is improving the lives that it touches, because it can, and it's all on a relative basis. And in order for that to happen, we need to make it normal. We need to make it as part of your regular coffee shopping, as part of your regular grocery shopping. If you're an alcohol consumer, part of your LCBO run on a weekly basis. Let's make it that comfortable, make it that normal, and make it part of people's lives and not the thing that is defining them.
Yeah, and I think, for people that haven't come into a Northern Helm shop, I think back to that very small time period where shops were opening prior to legalization, and how fucking weird those places were.
Uncomfortable.
You had gated fences around it almost, and the staff that was working there were likely a little bit off, I would say.
They were trying to do a great job, though. That's the thing. Everybody that is working.
But this is such a different experience, And I invite anybody that hasn't come to Northern Helm to actually come down here, Fisher and Baseline, because it's not something that I think even I expected at legalization time. I had very much thought about Amsterdam and this little cutout in a wall where I was just going to toss money and he was just going to give me whatever I wanted, right? And this is an experience that you offer. And I think that's the important part, is that there is experts that work at these shops that can guide you in the right direction depending on what you want and where you want to be in that euphoric high, right? Maybe it isn't even a high. Maybe it is just a CBD product that you want. Maybe you're taking the pills before bed to get to sleep. Like, these are all things that are possible now because of the laws in Canada. And, you know, I love this idea that Northern Helm was created off of the trial and error of other companies that you experienced.
Absolutely, and we're going to keep learning, and we're going to keep getting the feedback from the customers and from the amazing teams that are in place at each of the stores.
Yeah.
And something that was important when we were going down the path of creating Northern Helm is working with local owner operators. In Ottawa, of course, Dylan Anderson running this business here. He's from Ottawa. He knows the city, loves the city. He's running this business. It has brought in amazing teams to work and to serve the customers coming through the door. And we provide a lot of training to ensure that the teams have the tools to be confident and feel good and engage in meaningful conversations, so that when that guest or that customer comes through the door that you're talking about, whether they're the CBD customer, whether they like the oils before bed, or whether they're a concentrates customer, they can engage in that conversation. And a big part of that is allowing that person to talk and feel comfortable and have that conversation. And that's really what we're trying to do in Northern Helm is we'll position the stores in locations that is convenient. It's part of your commute. 55,000 cars go by the front door here every day. Like, it's part of a number of individuals.
That's right. It is a busy street.
It's a busy spot where there's a ton of restaurants and banks in this plaza. People are coming into this plaza, and that's very much the mindset of where the real estate strategy is for all of the stores. It's go where people are already going. Let's not make people go out of their way, because those illicit stores back in the day had to be out of the way, because that was the only place they could get
right.
leases.
It was almost treated like an adult sex shop.
Yeah, exactly. And like, let's hide that away. We don't want to see it. Like, this is a beautiful space. We want there to be as much light as possible. Of course, following all the sightline restrictions, and that this behind us, as there are sunny days, this lights up a bit, and it helps light up the room, so it's natural light. It's not, you don't feel as if you're doing something wrong, like how you're describing.
Yeah, it's not a brown paper bag at cash, that is meant to look concealed. Like, there's some logo on it, or, exactly. I think we're getting to this point where it's normalized, is what it is.
That's what we're working towards, and we've still got a long way to go. We recognize that.
Yeah.
And working with awesome people, both on the corporate side and at the store level, is how we can keep learning from the guests and adapting. And we're going to make mistakes, and we'll try to learn from those as quickly as possible.
So Northern Helm, it's definitely here to stay.
Yes. We have 6 locations now.
6 locations across Ontario. What's next for the company? Are we going to see a grand takeover of all provinces, or
what's next for the company? So we've got a couple of pretty cool things going on right now. The Northern Helm mentioned before we got to filming here was we merged with J Supply Holdings. So J Supply Holdings and J Supply Co., which has 5 stores, allows a little bit more scale. Allows learnings from those stores to come into these stores, and vice versa. Again, getting towards the best possible outcome for the guests, and hopefully the best outcome for the team members working in the stores, build that confidence. So that's one of course important point of all of the adaptation. We're going to see a few more stores open for Northern Helm this year, which is great. We're being smart, though, with the level of saturation that is in the market. Mm-hmm. It's not going out and going after any lease that's possible, but it's, hey, is there a store that is already really well positioned and can be converted into a Northern Helm and do a great job serving the guests that way? Is there a town or a plaza that is opening up that wasn't on anybody's radar before? We'll go after it. We're taking the time to be opportunistic with the openings, because we need to be sustainable. For we need to be sustainable for the team members that are working in the store. We need to be around for the long term for the guests that are coming in. So it has to be a functioning business that can be around for a long time. I want to retire with Northern Helm still on my resume. That's a key element of what we're doing here. This is not a flash in the pan. South of the border, we've got some work going on down there. We announced in the fall joint venture with a number of individuals, including Lauren Gertner, and we're doing work down focused on New Jersey and New York as they come on for rec legalization. And again, being opportunistic, let's not hurt ourselves trying to be the first and the best and the biggest, because there are MSOs with hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank that can go and do that. But let's find the areas that we can best serve the guests in those particular towns and do that. So we will grow in a way that allows us to continue staying true to our core values.
That's amazing. That's perfect. Well, David, thank you so much for stopping by today. Well, we're stopping by here, actually.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. This is amazing.
And
we need to get you some product before you go, of course.
Of course. And I think it's worth mentioning again that 420 is coming up. You guys are celebrating in a big way.
We're thanking the amazing guests that come in here by providing some ridiculous deals for them.
It is the cannabis enthusiast holiday of the year, which is taking place in a couple days from now. So just to remember, guys, we got 42% off cannabis and select cannabis and cannabis accessories here at Northern Helm, Baseline, and Fisher. Make sure, if you don't want to come to the store, you can get it delivered. And if you want to do a one-click and pickup, you can do that too. Or if you want to come in here and just shop around, you can do that as well. Use promo code CREATIVE15 at checkout, and you might get a little surprise, a little bonus. Who knows? You'll figure it out. Thanks again, David. It was really nice chatting with you. And everybody, remember, we are in this together. Be wise, be kind, and take care.
It was very, very good. I would definitely recommend coming to the next one.